Perfect. So let me start again. Hello and welcome everyone to the event. Thank you for joining right here on Microsoft Teams and for downloading the app itself. I'm very grateful for that. So this event is about getting started with Net Core. It's a web framework, and also you can also use it to build the backends for mobile apps. So I don't want to talk too much. We have an expert here, Microsoft MVP. So he will take us through all the stuff that you have to know to get started with this framework. So Mr. Samuel, okay, so Mr. Samuel is still setting up, so let us wait.
Yeah, and maybe since we are not that many, it would be helpful to have, most of us on the call, introduce ourselves. I mean, it's not a huge crowd, so it's good to have, some introduction so that we all can feel a bit more comfortable.
Okay, so I want to start by introducing myself first. I am Prince Adimado. I am an beta MLSA, that's Microsoft Learning Student Ambassador, and I'm a student of Accra Technical University studying computer science. So I'll welcome Victor Ade to introduce himself. He's also okay. So let's Victor Ade introduce himself. Victor.
Hi. Yes. So my name is Victor Nanade. I'm also a beta MLSA, and yeah, I welcome you to this event. Yeah.
So Nathaniel, if you can hear me, kindly introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Nathaniel Kwanzaa. I'm a student, computer science student at ATU currently, and I'm happy to join and then take part in this and then also learn about ASP.NET. I'm really excited to learn about this technology.
Oh, wow, that's great. That's great. That's great. So Emmanuel Samoa, if you can hear me, kindly unmute yourself and introduce yourself. Yeah, unmute yourself and introduce.
Okay, so my name is Emmanuel Samoa. I'm a junior developer, and yeah, I use .NET, but I would like to learn more about .NET from this forum. So I'm looking forward to it.
Oh wow, that's great. That's great. So our next person is Priscilla Yati. Yeah, I call her Yali all the time. So Priscilla Yati, kindly unmute yourself and introduce.
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm Priscilla Yati, and I'm new to this. I don't know what the beta something is about, but then I want to know more about web development. So I'm excited to be part of it. Thank you.
Oh wow, yeah. So I hope after this event you know more about this framework and how to get started with it. So Hansen, if you can hear me, kindly unmute yourself and introduce. Yeah. Hansen?
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, Hansen.
Yeah, my name is Hansen Selassie Hamani, and I'm a student of University of Energy and Natural Resources. Prince is a friend of mine, and I'm happy to join this platform to learn from you guys.
Okay, Hansen, that's great. That's great. So our next person is Boas. I don't know whether I mentioned the name right. Boas. Yeah. So
it was.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm also a student of Accra Technical University, and then I'm totally a beginner in, let's say, computing. So I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, that's great. Me too. I'm also starting now, so I also want to enter into this, or I'll start programming in this framework. So after this event, you all know how to get started, what to do, and all that, the resources to go to learn and all that. So, Mr. Samuel, I think you have like all of us on the call have introduced ourselves. So
Yep.
yeah, so you can share your screen.
All right. Let's see. Just a sec here. All right. Let me share my screen. Okay. So I can move this here. Share my screen. Let me know if you can see my screen. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay,
Yeah.
just a sec. I'd also need to, for the purposes of introduction, let me turn on my camera.
Yeah.
So you can put a face to the name. And then once we start, I'll probably turn it off. All right. So thanks for having me. You might be seeing me move my head because I have a lot of monitors around me that I use to do my presentations. But yeah, thank you for having me today. It's always a pleasure when the community calls on you to share and do some of these things. So I'll be introducing myself as part of the presentation. But what I would want to throw out here is the topic, or what we're going to talk about today, is very broad. It's really huge. The different aspect to it, and considering that there are people coming from different levels of it, I would request, or I'll humbly ask Prince, that we might probably do a follow up on this. If the interest is still there, we will pretty much make it into series where we take from one step to another to make it easy for you to follow. So today, in today's session, I will try as much as possible to give you, the introductory of it, everything, most of the basic things you need to understand about it. And then we'll get started, with a few things. And then if time permits, or if it's agreed, we can do another session, and then we'll take it on, in that step. It doesn't necessarily have to be another, Saturday. It could be, we could arrange something. It would be one of the evenings, and then we can, look at it holistically. All right. So let's get started. So today we'll be taking a look at, even though it is web development with .NET, like I said, I'll backtrack and give you a bigger picture of, the entire .NET ecosystem. All right. And then we'll work ourselves, through it. And feel free, because we are not many, let's make it a bit more interactive. So ideally people will say, let me do the slide. When I end, you ask the question. But because we are not that many, if there's any question, Prince, feel free to draw my attention to it. I'll try to answer them as we go, so the understanding is much clearer. All right.
Okay,
So
that's down.
awesome. All right. So I think you put a face to the name. So I'll turn it off to save bandwidth, and then we can continue with the session. So hopefully you can still see my screen. Let me move my presenter screen here. All right. So let's move this away. All right. Awesome. So let's get into it. So first of all, my name is Samuel Adrani. I am a Microsoft MVP, 3 years running, on the Azure category. MVP is Microsoft Most Valuable Professional, or Expert, in different Microsoft product areas and categories. Mine, as of now, all the 3 years running, has been on Azure. So pretty much everything on Azure and Dev Technologies is where my MVP award is. I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer, I think 5 years running. So pretty much train on a lot of the Microsoft official course content. I'm also a certified Oracle certified professional in database administration, development, and a few things. But that's just a few of the accolades we have to throw out by virtue of doing presentations. Currently, I'm the CTO for Afrologic Solutions. It's a general purpose startup that does a lot of bespoke solutions in the areas of mixed reality, AI, machine learning, IoT, cloud solutions, and intelligent applications and systems. We also do training and then business process automation as well. I'm an IoT, AI, and cloud solutions architect as well, and also a passionate enthusiast in all these technologies. So if you probably follow me on social media, you will see that the guy is crazy in these spaces. I'm a community lead. As of now, I'm one of the organizers for the Accra.net user group and the Accra Power Platform user group. I stream 3 times a week, and I hope all of you would subscribe to my channel after this. So I stream on Tuesdays on IoT. Fridays, which was yesterday, I did demystify technology. On Fridays, which is general tech demystification. And then on Sundays, I do Power Series, which I talk about the Microsoft Power Platform, low code, no code solutions. And then I have a podcast that I released once a while every Fridays, just talking about developers, African developers across the world, their journeys to technology. So please subscribe for me. My social media handles, very simple, is S Adrani in all the social media handles. So do well to, check me out. Right. So today, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about a few things. We'll talk about .NET itself. We'll talk about the languages that it supports. We'll talk about the cross-platforms, libraries. We'll look at the various application models. We'll look at some tools and resources. We'll try to understand why .NET. And then we'll take a look at getting started, some demos and examples, and ask some questions. I'll put it there. If you have any other questions, you can add. But like I said, you can always interject and ask the questions as we're moving on. So let's start with .NET, right? So what is .NET? So .NET is free. It's a free cross-platform open source development platform for building different types of apps. Simply put, a couple of things to be mindful of. It's free, it's cross-platform, it's open source. Free, everyone can download it. You don't pay to download .NET. Cross-platform, whether you're using Mac, Linux, Windows, you can run it. Even if you're using embedded devices like Raspberry Pis, you can run them on it. It's open source, which means it's available for you to download and modify if you want to, but it's maintained by Microsoft and a large community of enthusiasts. Now, it's a development platform as well that allows you to build different types of applications, which I would show or talk more about as we move on. Now, with .NET, you can use multiple languages, right? And editors and libraries to build for web, mobile, games, desktop, and IoT. You can always do that. So irrespective of where your interest is, whether you want to do web, whether you want to do IoT, whether you want to do mobile, you can always use .NET to do it. And there are languages that support it. So that's why from the beginning I said, even though this is talking about web, .NET goes beyond the web. And the more reason why I want to backtrack and then talk about this. And then if we come to some agreement, we can create a whole series about it. We can do the website of .NET, and then we can do the IoT side, we can do the mobile side. That's a continuous series. If you guys show interest, I might do that on my Demystify Tech on Fridays for a couple of weeks. We'll just take it one after the other and be more in-depth. So the ball is in your court. Prince and your team, figure it out. Now, we talk about development platform, right? Development platform consists of the languages and the libraries. So the .NET platform itself consists of the languages support and the libraries it provides for you to build your solutions, all right? So what are these languages? Now, as of today, you can write .NET apps in C#, F#, or Visual Basic. So 3 languages supported by .NET. So it means that gone are the days where you think, oh, I can only write C#, or Visual Basic on on Windows. That's not the case anymore. You can do C#, F#, Visual Basic on any platform that supports .NET. In this case, Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. Now, C# is a simple, modern, object-oriented and type-safe programming language that allows you to build robust applications. F# is also another language from Microsoft that allows you, it allows you to write very succinct, simple code that is robust and very performant. Then Visual Basic, the old favorites, most of us started, this kind of graphical application development using Visual Basic, right? So Visual Basic is one of the approachable languages that has a very simple syntax and also type-safe object-oriented application development, right? Now, let's quickly take a look at some of the platforms or the cross-platform abilities of .NET. All right. So whether you're working in any of the languages, whether C Sharp, F Sharp, Visual Basic, right, your code will run natively on any compatible operating system. That's one of the reasons why it's cross-platform. Now, .NET implementations handle all the heavy lifting for you and makes it easy for you to build. Now, there are a couple of platforms here. The .NET Core itself, or sometimes, well, it used to be referred to as just .NET, but now more precisely .NET Core, right? Now, .NET Core runs anywhere. It's cross-platform, right? It is the .NET implementation for building websites, services, console apps, Windows, Linux, Macs. That runs on all, these platforms, right? Now, the .NET framework is also kind of like an encapsulation or abstraction from it that supports the development of websites, services, desktop apps, and more on Windows, even games. If you want to do stuff for Xbox, HoloLens, the .NET framework allows you to do that. Then there's a third one, which was called Mono, then called Xamarin, and now called Maui, which is Maui simply put for multi-platform app UI. So it's evolved from Mono to Xamarin and now being evolved into Maui, which is going to be the next generation for mobile app development using .NET, right? So this is more for building mobile apps, specific mobile apps using .NET framework, right? Or the .NET standard. Now, aside all this, you realize that someone will say, well, it looks like there are three platforms, right? .NET Core, which is the basics of it, framework that builds on top of it, and Maui or Xamarin for mobile application. Isn't that confusing, or isn't that a lot of things going on? Well, technically, no. So what Microsoft did was that, you know what, let's have one consistent API, right, called .NET Standard or just .NET in most cases. Now, which is going to give you the base set of APIs that are common in all the .NET implementation. So whether it is .NET Core, the framework, Maui, Xamarin, whatever that is, .NET Standard is the base, right? Is the base set of libraries that are shared by all this. So if you are building any solution that uses the .NET Standard or .NET Core, you pretty much have access to the base things, and you can now add more libraries to it, to enhance or build up your application. So each implementation can also expose additional APIs, right, that are specific to your operating systems you are running on. So for example, .NET Framework is Windows only, most cases. .NET implementation that includes API for accessing specific Windows registries. But then the standard, you can use that based on the OS you're running on. One of the features that make it very cross-platform. So we made mention of libraries. Now, if you regularly build apps, let's say with JavaScript and other languages, JavaScript common if you're doing Node stuff, there's npm, where you go, npm install Axios, Fetch, or whatever those libraries are. All right. The similar thing happens when you're building stuff on .NET. So what happens is that .NET allows you, the libraries allow you to add functionality, extra functionalities to your application. So now one of the days where .NET was quite heavy was huge because they embedded all these libraries into it all at a go. But now, no, a lot of this has been decoupled. So meaning you have the core framework or core libraries, and then depending on what you want to add or functionality you want to add, you can use the libraries to do that. Now, NuGet is one of the biggest package managers built specifically for .NET. Now, it has over 90,000 plus packages, and it's counting. Because the community is open source, if you're looking for some package or library and you don't find it, you can always, build it and then contribute and put it there for others to also use, just like people have done for you also to, to utilize. Then, with all this understanding, one asks the questions, what can I build using .NET? Well, that's what we talk about, the application models, right? The application models tell you what you can build on it. As you can see, in the big category, all right, sorry, in the big category of developing things you can build with .NET, you can build stuff for web. So you can build web apps and services for Windows, Linux, Mac OS, and even Docker, right? Then mobile, you can build, use as a single code base to build native mobile apps for iOS, Android, Windows. Also, desktop apps. You can create beautiful and compelling desktop app for Windows and Mac OS, right? Then microservices. You can also create independent deployable microservices that will run in Docker containers, right? Then cloud. You can do consume existing cloud service or create and deploy your own machine learning and AI, right? Innovation, ad vision algorithms, speech processing, predictive models, and many more. You can do that. Those interested in game development, you can also do that. Develop 2D, 3D games, for desktop, phone, or console. And consoles here mean Xbox, all right? Then Internet of Things, IoT. Make IoT apps with native support for Raspberry Pi and single port computers. So you realize that it technically cuts across the entire ecosystem, all right? And this is one of the reasons why I personally love .NET and C#. Even though I do a lot of Java, I pretty much was a .NET person from core. And one thing I forgot to mention from the beginning, .NET is actually 20 years this year. And so and I'll give you a hint, I started using .NET when it came out. So that should tell you how long I've been using .NET. So that's just by the way. Don't feel intimidated. It's just the things we go through and we evolve. So these are the many things you can develop or build using .NET. So ASP.NET is just one side of it. It's just one side of it, right? Which falls under the web category, right? And then we'll talk more about it. So that's what I'm saying, that we'll start with the introduction of how to build .NET, and then we'll evolve into the web and take a look at, sorry about that, and evolve into the web and take a look at how, that works. All right. Awesome. So what are some of the tooling, now that we understand what it is, what we can build with it? What are some of the tooling and resources, that we have at our disposal that we can use? All right. So let's go ahead and share this quickly. So in terms of resources, all right, Visual Studio product family, right? So whether it is Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio itself, it provides you a great .NET development experience, whether it's on Windows, Linux, or Mac OS. So you know that you can actually run Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio on Mac OS, Linux, and Windows now, right? If you don't have Windows, if you don't have Linux or Mac, you can use the Windows subsystem for Linux. You can use that. Then the Visual Studio Marketplace, all right, on its own has thousands of editor extensions, from Microsoft and other, third-party vendors that you can use to augment your development, right? Then if you prefer to use different editors, well, there's also the .NET command line tools that you can, and plugins that you can use within popular editors. It's also supported. But for most of the things, we would all agree to the fact that it is Visual Studio Code has become one of the de facto one of the de facto tools to use. So you can download Visual Studio Community Edition. It's free. You can download Visual Studio Code. You can also download Visual Studio for Mac. All right, you can download and install them, and these are all free resources. You can now, if you want to use third party, if you also want to use, let's say, third party tooling, all right, you can use OmniSharp, which is kind of like a plugin for I think it's an Atom plugin as well. So you can use for Sublime Text and other stuff. You can also use JetBrains Rider, which is a cross-platform IDE, .NET IDE built using IntelliJ and ReSharper. And you can use, like we mentioned, the .NET CLI. All right. So these are some of the tooling you can actually use, tooling and editors you can use, to build your .NET stuff. In terms of other resources, learning materials, before we end today's session, I'll share Microsoft Learn, a couple of sites where you can go, review and learn a few things. All right. Yeah. So let's move on. Let's move on. All right. So the next thing I want to bring to your attention or share with you, question that a lot of people ask. All right. Why .NET? Why .NET? Couple of things, right? For anything or any reason why you choose to do something, you need to make sure that you pretty much understand the workings of it and the reasons behind it. So I'll give you these 6 reasons and a last one, which I'll add at the end, why you should use .NET. All right. First of all, .NET gives you increased productivity, right? It helps you to develop high quality applications faster, right? So it has modern language constructs like generics, language integrated query. You can do asynchronous programming. It is developer, productive, right? It has a lot of extensions you can combine to make it, build things very fast. And most of these things are tried and tested. Now, the second part, which I think I mentioned already, is it's cross-platform. All right. With .NET, you can target any application type running on any platform. So whether you're building for mobile, web devices, IoT, you can build anything. So think about it. Would you rather, if let's say you're a company or you're trying to build a solution and you want to deploy them on different platforms, and then, for instance, if you have to deploy on web, you have to use a different framework. For mobile, a different framework. For embedded devices, a different framework. For consoles, a different framework. No, that's just too much work. But .NET cross-platform, any app, any platform, anywhere allows you to do that. You can actually do what we call code reuse. So you can have a common or standard code base that you can share amongst all your applications. Write one, use many. All right. That's the second reason. The third reason here, I'll say it is loved by a lot of developers, right? Now, .NET is a modern, innovative open source development platform. If you didn't know that by now, it is ranked one of the most loved frameworks on Stack Overflow. There was a developer survey between 2019 and 2020, and .NET was one of the most loved frameworks. Now, as if that is not enough, performance, right? Performance where it matters. .NET is really fast, and there has been a lot of improvement and advances made on it that now it's even comparative to running a lot of the faster Node and even lighter version frameworks, right? So there was a lot of benchmark done, and that put .NET faster than other popular frameworks. I mean, we can share the link for you to go look at that. So if you look at, there's a comparison on this side of the screen if you can see it. Now, if you're using Java Servlet, you can do up to 2.17 million requests per second, right? On the far right, if you're doing a similar application in Node, you can do less than 1 million requests a second. But if you're running .NET, benchmark has shown you can do up to 7 million requests per second. That is how performant .NET is. The other part is, the fifth reason is trusted and secure. Now, .NET platform is officially supported by Microsoft, and as you know, Microsoft and its reputation and its partners and people take security very seriously. So they don't just, in as much as it's open source, they don't just release anything out for you to use with a lot of vulnerabilities and stuff like that. It continues to get all these things fixed, so it is very secured and trusted. The final part is, it has a large ecosystem. There are over 5 million .NET developers worldwide, right? So you can leverage that ecosystem if you have, as in building libraries, seeking for help, support, answering technical questions and all that. There's a huge community. So today, if you are not, you have to make sure you join our .NET user group, where we do series of, of these things. Now, last but not least, I might not show it on this slide, but .NET, like I mentioned, is open source, right? And responsibility, like I say, even though Microsoft runs it, it's open source, and they make sure they're adhering, to how do you call it? Adhering to the principles, the best practices, and all that you need to learn them. Now, one thing that I won't probably bother so much on is because if you're interested in learning .NET, then that means that you will need to, one way or the other, pick one of the languages. All right, so either C Sharp, F Sharp, or Visual Basic, and my recommendation will be to go for C Sharp. Now, so you might see me write some C Sharp code today. C Sharp is not the focus of today's session. It is more the .NET framework and building web applications. All right, so what we can do is that I'll go on with the getting started. I'll explain a few of the code. Like I said, we can work this out. If it's workable for all of us, we can have a series that we can have a whole C Sharp series you can delve into. But I'll share resources on how to learn C Sharp on other stuff as well. So don't get stressed. All right. So the last, getting started. Deliberately, I left this blank because a lot of talk means we have to put some, something down. Now, this is the end of the introduction slides I wanted to share with you, on how to what you need to know getting started for .NET. All right. So next thing, what we're going to do before we jump into it, does anyone have any questions? Any questions? Can you guys still hear me? I hope I've not lost you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Do we have any questions before we move on? I see the numbers have increased a bit. Do we have any questions?
No.
Okay, now how many of you, and you can use the reactions buttons in Teams to show by hand, how many of you know some C#? How many? Okay, there's an interaction button there. Okay, first time hearing about F#, that's fine. And feel free, you can come off mute and ask the questions. Like I said, I want this to be very interactive. So someone says the slide is stuck on y.net. Is that still the case?
No, please. I can see your desktop.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. All right, no problem. The reason why I'm asking how many of you C# is that it will be more appreciated if you have some knowledge of it. It's not like a must. If we know the gap, in those that don't know the C#, then maybe Prince and the team can organize another session where we start with C# 101, right? So that it will benefit in the long run. Right. So not to worry. If the large consensus is a lot of you don't understand C# or haven't used C#, then we'll have to, maybe after the session we'll figure it out, work with Prince and the .NET organization team to see how we can put together a learning C#. But I'll share resources with you in the chat where you can go start learning C#. All right. Use the videos. Actually, let me do that right now. So there is a let's see, you can, okay, let me share. I'm going to share a huge library of videos from .NET, the .NET team. I just share that, so you can keep that saved somewhere, and then you can, from time to time, just go hit it and, in your own pace, in your own time, learn a few things. All right, so we're going to do an introduction, how to create a very basic .NET application, right? Very basic, very simple application, basic application, and then we can evolve it from there. Even before we start to look at the web or mobile or any other use case for it. All right. So prerequisite, technically you don't need any prerequisites, so we can get started. But one of the things I want to share with you, all right, is something called try.net. Our good friends in Microsoft, especially led by Maria Nagaga, put together this try.net, which is runnable .NET code on your site. So you can see, if you don't have, or if you don't want to download, how do you call it? I don't want to download .NET framework and install and do all that. You can just open a web browser, all right, and then try .NET in a browser like here right now. So this is a very simple snippet. There's an array of names, and then all it's saying is that it's cycling for each name in the array. Just write hello and that name. So if you run this code right now, it's compiling in the cloud. As you can see, hello Anna, hello Felipe, hello Emilia, right? Very basic. And I didn't need to have a code editor or an IDE to do that, or a text editor, right? It's basically in a browser. So I'm also going to share that link here also in it. So there you go, try.net. If you don't want to do the installation, you can go there and then use try.net. So that's what I wanted to share with you. So let's keep it here whilst we get started with it. And we'll take it, like I said, we'll take it step by step. So don't rush, don't need to feel stressed. So number one, the first thing you need to do is you need to make sure you have downloaded and installed the .NET framework. All right, the .NET, you need to have the SDK. As of now, .NET 6 is what is recommended, or which is in active use, right? So you need to download and install it. So depending depending on which of your machine, whether it's 32 64-bit or it's another system, you need to download it, right? And I have already done that, but I can share. Let me share the link. Let me actually copy this link here and paste it. So you can go here and download it. Let me see if I can just drop this link here as well. Yep. So if you go here, you can download and install the .NET SDK, right? Which is what you need. So per thought, the assumption is this has been installed, all right? So let's go ahead and let me run my terminal. And as of now, I'm not using any, all right? I'm not using any IDE or code editor, right? It's just my basic terminal. So if I do .NET, as you can see, I get some info, usage.net, the option, .NET something. So which tells me that .NET has been successfully installed on my machine and I can use it. I have the SDK and I can use it, all right, as well, right? So if everything is okay, this means you have .NET run. And yeah, maybe we can, we can do a few things, but basically this tells me .NET is running on my machine. So that is the first one done. So let's go ahead. I'll clear this, and I'm doing all this in console. Don't feel scared. I mean, I'm just letting you know how easy it is to start developing, and then we will jump into maybe Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio itself to use if we have the time. So a simple way to get started, all right? Simple way to get started. Let me go ahead and open. Let's do cd dev. All right. And let's do this. MKDR. I'm just making a directory called. I think I have .NET already. Let me actually see. I should have a folder called .NET. Do I? Okay, I don't. So I'm just going to create one right now. So let's call it .NET cd.NET, and this is nothing crazy. All I'm doing is I'm creating a folder called .NET where I want to start building my application, right? So to create a new application in .NET, and we are using CLI right now, but like I said, it's just a very basic entry into it. All I have to do is use .NET, right? I'm creating a new console app, right? Console app is running. It's going to write in your command prompt, right? And I will call it, let's call it demo. Let's call it demo app. And then I'm using the .NET Framework 6, right? 6.0, basically like this. Create a new console app, call it demo app, and use the .NET Framework 6, right? So we do this, and as you can see, it goes around, creates all these things for me. So now if I do dir in that folder, do you see I have a folder called demo app, right? So we can go here, cd demo app, and look at what it created for me. So it created my program.cs file, which is a C# file, and then it created a demo.cs project, a C# project file for me, right? So now I can decide at this point, I can decide to what do we do? I can decide to run the code from here, or I can decide to open this in either Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code. All right, all this works fine. All this works fine. So with this, if we want to look at, we can actually, let me actually open it in code so we see what's in there. So if I do code dot, I'm saying open Visual Studio Code using this directly. So it's going to open our project using Visual Studio Code in this directory, and you can see from here. All right, I just want to make my code a little bigger so you can see it. Sometimes when I'm streaming, people say, "Oh, I can't see your code," so I try as much as possible. So basically, just these three files. So program.cs is the meat of your program. All right, is where you're going to write the logic. Now you can add extra files. Like I said, today's session is not focused on teaching C#. All right, it's just showing you how to get started with .NET Framework, and we can focus on that. Yeah, let's just close all this. Sorry about that. So now, this basic program is simply console.writeLine, which means write to the console hello world. So let's go ahead and say, let's say hello .NET in Ghana, right? Let's just do this. And I'll save this. So this is, anytime this runs, it's just going to say hello.net, in Ghana, right? So basically that now, if we didn't have any errors, right? And pretty much this looks okay, let's go ahead and run it. Now I'm going to run it first in the console where we started, and then I'll come back to Visual Studio Code and run it again. So we'll save this. Let's come back here. So in our code, all you need to do to run is to do what? .NET run. And pretty much it's going to compile it, run it, and show you what. Now, do you see that? Look at what happened. Hello.net in Ghana. So basically, you have written your very, very first .NET code. Very simple, all right? So now this is without you not knowing C#, but this is just showing how simple it is to write it. And as of now, I didn't use any anything, let's say IDE, it's just crazy. This is terminal. So if you have terminal or command prompt on your machine and you've already installed your .NET SDK, you can do this. You can even use a notepad or anything to write the code and then compile it. It would work. All right. So now that we know how to do this here, let's go ahead and modify. Now the same thing. If I decide to come to where is that? Yeah, if I decide to come here, right? Oh no, this is a different project. Forgive me. Yeah. So if we come here and I open the command prompt here again, I could still do .NET run, and the same thing within the context of this folder. You can see that this also ran successfully. All right. So any which ways you can do it. Now let's take it a step further and add something new. All right. So let's do, now you can see the other thing I like about using Visual Studio Code, you can see there's Intellisense, right? As I start to type, it's giving me heads up. Okay, are you trying to type this? So we want to do console, and you can see I have something called Copilot, GitHub Copilot, which is an AI model that tries to suggest the next thing I need to type. All right, I can actually use Copilot to write a logic to do something, and I'll show you briefly if we have time before we go. So let's do something right now. So let's see, console.writeLine, and all I want to do is to do this. Let's do this. The current time is right, and you see that, you see code completion. It is telling me, it is suggesting to me, oh, because you want to get the time, I can tell you how to get it. This is it. And all I have to do is to press the tab key, pump, and then it's written that code for me. Isn't this simple? So you understand why we say .NET is very productive and performance. Now, if I save this, just like we did, right? And then we go back and remember, you do what? .NET run. We run this. Now it's going to say hello, and then look at that, added the current time. It is 26 March 1:58:40 seconds PM. All right. That is as simple as it can get. Now, isn't this interesting? Any questions? Any questions? Now, the logical thing to do next, for now that you understand what .NET is and what you can do with it and build a very basic thing, two things can happen, right? You already know the things you can build with .NET. Is that okay? You already know the things you can build with .NET. Now, the next logical thing for me, which I would advise, considering that most of you don't know C#, is take an introductory to C# or learn C#. I provided the link, right? Just familiarize yourself with, the basic constructs of using C#, right? Once you are done, you can now take the bold step to come and say that, okay, now I want to build web application. Okay, I want to build a web application using .NET. I want to build, do you have to install any VS Code extension to get C# Intellisense? Yes, Nathan, yes. by default, if you install Visual Studio Code, the latest version, I think it already comes pre-packaged with some of these extensions. So for instance, if you go to extensions here, and then you expand it, you see that there are a lot of extensions from Microsoft. So if you do C#, you will get, you see that. So this is a C#, which is official from Microsoft. You get it. By default, they install it, right? Does it leverage JavaScript? So what with the .NET framework, does it leverage JavaScript syntax? So no. So .NET uses, you can develop on .NET using 3 languages: C#, F#, and Visual Basic, right? Preferably C#. Now, C# is an object-oriented programming, language on its own. It's not JavaScript is not too object-oriented. If you're using TypeScript, yes, but it's a bit it's the understanding will probably be the same, but it's a bit different from it. But the cool thing is that with .NET, especially on the web development side, you can actually transpile or compile JavaScript to be used in a C# project. That's getting to it too in depth, but I wouldn't worry about that at this point. So next logical thing to do, like I said, try to learn C#. That's one, and then that you can use .NET and C# to build a lot of things. So before we call it, since we are an hour into it, since we didn't start early, I'll just show you a few things. All right, let's just I just want to show you something really quick, and then we can take it from there. So let me bring my, now you remember we said that the application models for .NET include web, machine learning and all that, right? Now if you want to do web development with .NET, right? If you want to do web development with .NET, now these are some of the things you can do under the web development. Now you can build interactive UIs using Blazor, right? So Blazor is Microsoft, how would I say it? For those of you that do front-end development like React, Vue, and all that, Angular, Blazor is Microsoft equivalent. All right, but then this is backed by C#. So you are writing interactive UI using C#, right? Now that would be the next logical thing, like I say, after you finish with C#, or we can just still delve into it. But under building web development using .NET, you can build web applications, which is basically using, just building your HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and C#. So what's going to happen is that for your front end, you are either using Blazor or HTML, CSS, JavaScript on the front end, and the back end of your web app is going to be C#. You can build APIs for web using C# as well. You can build real-time applications. Yesterday on my Demystified Tech show, I was sharing on how to build real-time application using Signal R. So you can also do that. And you can also build microservices. All right. Now, for web application, right? If you want to build web applications on .NET, we leverage what we call ASP.NET. All right. Now, ASP.NET is part of the ecosystem or extensions, right, of the .NET platform. We've already talked about .NET, right? Now, ASP.NET is just an extension that has tools and libraries that allow you to build web applications. .NET, generally, we've seen that you can use .NET to build different things. The part of .NET or the extension of .NET that allows you to build web applications is what we call ASP.NET. Is that okay? Now, so it has the extra tools and libraries that allow you. So pretty much leveraging on the same, on the same functionalities of .NET, all right? Prince, I don't know how long we scheduled this for. How are we doing on time?
Oh, okay. We can go on up to one. Sorry, 2:30. 2:30. I think.
Okay.
Because we didn't start early.
Okay. All right. Okay. Awesome. That's fine. All right. So if that's the general consensus, then I will take away the prerequisite of assuming that everybody knows C sharp. It's understandable. You don't know it, but we're going to assume that you know C sharp. We're going to get started with the building a basic application, a web application using ASP.NET. All right. So do we have any questions so far? Any questions? I don't like this audience. You are too quiet for my liking.
You have a
No,
question?
no, we don't have
You have
any.
any?
So
Oh,
all these plenty things I have said. You people are not asking any questions. Yes. Yeah, I think someone wanted to ask a question.
okay.
Who wanted to ask the question?
Okay, Edwin, you can ask your question.
All right. Good afternoon once again.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, Mr. Sam. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something. I can see in the .NET stack now we have ML.NET.
Yeah.
ML.NET. Yeah, for the ML.NET, is it a programming language or that one too can be classified as a library?
Okay. So just like I was explaining, all right. ML.NET or so ASP.NET, which you're seeing right now, is just an extension of the .NET framework or platform that allows you to build a web application. All right. ML.NET is an extension of the .NET platform to build machine learning modules. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. It does.
So it's just an extension of .NET, providing you the libraries and tools you need to do machine learning. So it's easier and faster for you to build machine learning modules using ML.NET, still leveraging on one language you've learned, C sharp. So that is the power and beauty of it. So if I learn C sharp, all right, if I learn C sharp, I can use that one language I have learned to develop and build on all these platforms or all these tools.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what we are going to do is that so you realize, like we said, under web, all right, under web you can do web apps, you can do APIs, you can do real time and microservices. All right. So we're going to start, and again, we're just going to build a very basic web ASP.NET app using .NET framework and C sharp. All right. So let's minimize this. So now we already have one going. So let's look at this. CD, we're going to go back so into our .NET, and we have a demo app, right? Okay, so we're cool here. So we're going to, and what now the assumption is we've already installed, our SDK. We are ready to go, right? So let's get started. We have our SDK installed, and you remember that the first time when we're building the console app, this is what we used. You see, we use what? Console, correct? Now, this time around, what we are going to use is we are not building a console app. We are building a web app, all right? So you do web what? App. And how do you call it? So let's say our demo, let's call this demo web app, right? And we are not going to use any HTTPS. So let's do this. No HTTPS. And again, the framework remains the same, .NET 6.0. You see how uniform this is. So this again is going to scaffold, as you can see. So it's scaffolded a web application for us. So now we can go ahead and now say CD into our demo web app. And then if we do dir again, you see that now this has almost the same as a program, but you can see some app settings, some www routes, some pages. You can see some more things, right? An easier way for us to explore and look at this, again, once we're in the folder, I'll open this in Visual Studio Code by typing code dot. So now this opens our project for us, and as you can see, quite simple. Again, all right, again, program.cs is the entry point into your application. All right, is the entry point into your application. Now, to basically just some simple, just want to explain the code very simply. We're using require asset to build yeah, let's add them. Yeah, so pretty much my idea is helping me to add stuff. Anyway, now so we're using a builder, which is one of the packages from the .NET framework, a web application builder, right? So this will allow us to add the services we want to use to build this web app. And as you can see from line 4, it is leveraging the Razor pages. I told you Razor is more or less like React or Vue when it comes to the .NET and the Microsoft ecosystem. So what we are doing is by using the Blazor services. So our app, we use the same builder to create an app. We're configuring the environment. We're telling that the app should use static files because we want to save images, stuff, images, icons and stuff. You want to make sure you use that. We also want to use routing. Now, this looks almost like Node. For those that have done JavaScript Node, setting this up as a web app almost looks like it. So here we're using routing that will allow us to move from one page to another, authorization, use the Razor View, and then app.run. All right. So pretty much that is this one. Now to run this, we will use a bit of a different approach. We won't do .NET run. We want to do this instead. .NET watch. All right. Now what this does is it enables something called hot reload. Now what hot reload does is it watches your code as you are developing it. And then what will happen is that as you make changes, right, and you do Control R, it will restart and then publish your changes. Now this is our application that we just scaffolded. Welcome, learn about. This is the very basic thing, right? So when I did the .NET watch, this is what showed up. All right, this is what showed up. If I want to stop the server, I will use Control C to stop the server. All right. Very, very simple. So if I want to stop this, I'll use Control C. It shuts down and it comes back here. All right. And if I go back to this page and I refresh, it will error out because the server is no longer running. All right. You see, it says an error. But if I go back to new .NET Watch again, that should come up again. And as you can see, basically, that is it. We've created a basic web app. Now, to show you the hot reload, let's go ahead and let me do the .NET watch again. All right. So it's being watched. It will save the page. So the page has been saved. If we go into the code, I think this is, let's go here to www root. Let's go. Okay, let's go here first. And then index. So this is specific to using Blazor. So there are a bunch of shared views and a bunch of common pages. All right. So it uses CSHTML because there's some CSS in there. Let's do this. So this one, for instance, so you see that they are passing some data as in the home page. They are passing some data into it. But if let's say we want to change this, welcome to Ghana.net sessions. All right. And I save this. So this has been saved. Now let's go back here. See this. This is what happened. Almost in real time. This has been updated. That is because of the watch or the hot reload that is happening. Maybe if you don't believe this, let me try to do this. Yeah. Let me put this here and then put this here. All right. So this on the left is our editor, and this is what is happening live. So if I change this, So let's say welcome to Ghana, and I save Control S.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, hello.
Yep.
Please, I can't hear anything. No.
You can't hear anything. Can you hear me now?
Mrs. Sam, I can hear you.
Okay.
Can hear you.
Hansen, please check your audio. Awesome. Do you guys see that it changed immediately? So if I say welcome to Nigeria, just trying to be a bit stubborn. So save this, Control S, and you realize that it will rebuild and run again. And look at that, almost in hot reload has changed it. All right. So that is one of the benefits of using hot reload. All right. So just like that, we have built, we built a website. We built a web app using .NET. Again, this is in its barest or smallest. Sir, please, I don't get it. Boaz, what don't you get? You can come off mute and speak so that I can better explain it. Boaz, can you come off mute and say and share your concerns so I can better address it for you?
Oh, I can see that he's typing.
Okay. What we are doing in a terminal? No, it's not a terminal, Boaz. This is Visual Studio Code. This is Visual Studio Code. So all I wanted to show you was that there's a feature in .NET when you're building web applications called hot reload, right? So here, what you're seeing here is Visual Studio Code. This is not a terminal. So I wanted to illustrate the fact that with hot reload, and it is normally when you're building websites, you want to see your changes. In most times, you have to save the changes. If you're using something like Node and you don't have hot reload, you save the changes and then go and start the server again and refresh. But here, this is what I wanted to show. If you look here, all I have to do is make the change, save, Control S, and look here in the browser. The browser would update. You see that Ghana. I didn't have to refresh it. That's hot reload. Priscilla, you have a question? I don't know, Boaz, if that answers your question, Joe. But Priscilla.
Yes, sir. I don't get how the Visual Studio and then the .NET is connected. Do you open both sites where you're creating the thing, or how does it work?
Okay, let me backtrack. I'm going to close. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to stop. All right. So .NET, right, allows you to build different types of applications. Okay, that is understood, at least to this point. Do we understand that to this point?
Yes,
okay,
sir.
awesome.
Yeah.
Now, so when we started, we created a console application, which was just showing hello, that just said hello and then gave us a time, right? Now, the next part which we mentioned was we can also use .NET to create websites, all right, or web applications, which is what we call the extension to do that is ASP.NET. So the part of .NET framework, the extension of .NET framework that allows you to build web applications is what we call ASP.NET. Is that clear?
Yes, yes.
Awesome. Now, so in order to show us how to create a web application using ASP.NET, I went ahead in using the command here, which is this. .NET, I'm creating a new web app, and I want to call it demo web app, right? And it should use .NET 6.0, which is the latest one. So when we ran this command, it created the project for us, right? And this is the entire project. When you run that code, it created the project for us, and this is technically the folder. Okay, so all I did was that this is command prompt, or this is the terminal. Instead of editing or doing it in a terminal, all I did was to open this folder in Visual Studio Code. So now I'm going to, let me turn off the terminal. So now this is Visual Studio Code. Does that make sense? Are you following now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now this is what, if I open it up here, this is what running .NET new web app, this is what it generates for you. It generates this folder structure and generates this sample code for you. Is that okay? And I was sharing that to run or to be able to test what you have built, right? You go ahead and do, usually you do what? You can do .NET run, but here you do .NET watch. So I was explaining that the reason why you do .NET watch when it comes to ASP.NET applications is that sometimes you want to make changes and see the changes reflect, right? In order to do that, .NET Watch allows you to do. So that's what I was showing. So right now, if we open this, if I should refresh this, yeah, you should see that this home page is running, right? Now, if I came here, so this is what I did. All I did was, let me just minimize this so that I show you that, yes, indeed, all I have to do is to make changes and save. So if you look at this document, it says, welcome to Ghana. So if I should change this and say, welcome to Accra, right? And then you let me even do this, file, save. All right, and I do the save. What's going to happen is that it's going to, do you see that on the right? It's changed to Accra.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is what hot reload does. I didn't have to save, run the server, and refresh. Is that okay? So I don't know if that answers your questions for Boaz, and also if that explains it better for you, Priscilla. So you see how it's connected now.
Yes, sir. So, but is it?
Yeah, I'm listening.
When you write something, the .NET, does it create the thing for you? Because it's like you just wrote some small things. You just wrote DIL and plenty things will come under it. Does it create those things for you? Does it write it itself?
Yes.
So please, do you understand?
So, yes, I understand. So that's what I'm saying. So I get where you're coming from, and I get what you are asking. So let's do this. Let me stop it. All right, let me shut it down. So doing .NET new and web, that is just the command line way of building or creating a new .NET web app, right? And when you do that, yes, what happens is once you write that, you use that, it goes ahead to create a folder called based on the name. Okay, so let me just run this, and I just want to show you something so you understand. So you see this is what we typed, .NET new. We are saying that we want to create a new web app, and we want to call it demo web app, and it should use .NET 6.0. Is that okay? Now, when you run this code, this is what happens. It created a new folder called demo web app and then added all this for you by default. So you can now start and make changes. You can start to edit and make changes. So that is all we did. And from there, all we have been doing is just to make changes to this. All right. Now, I'm going to make some more changes to this one. Okay. You know what? Let me make this a lot easier for you guys. So I'm going to close Visual Studio Code. I'm going to close this, right? Let me close all instances of Visual Studio Code. At least we've seen how to do it from the terminal from Visual Studio Code. So let me go ahead and open Visual Studio. Remember when we started, we talked about the fact that you can use a couple of things. You can use a CLI, you can use Visual Studio Code, you can use Visual Studio. We've seen the two. So let me make it a lot more easy so you don't see plenty code. All right. Yeah, Edwin.
Okay, yeah. So I think that is fine. I was even going to propose that maybe we do it from the Visual Studio.
Yeah. So I'm going to do it from Visual Studio for you to see. So all I have done is to open Visual Studio. All right. Nothing crazy. Let me do it again. I just opened Visual Studio. Like I said, you can get all these things free. Just go download it. So I open this. What do I want to do? I want to create a new project. So I click here, create a new project. And just like that, you also realize that it's giving me templates. You see it? It's giving me, oh, what do you want to create? So I can go in here and maybe type web. Now, do you see it? It's asking me, what do I want to create? Do I want to create? So here I can drop down. I'm creating a C# project for Android, Azure, but I'll just leave it to all platforms. And you see it, I can either decide to use, say I'm building a Blazor, something for IoT, an extension, or just web. All right. So now you see what's happening. It's giving me template. ASP web application .net, creating, and here I see so here's different ones. So web forms, Blazor, ASP.NET, Blazor, all right, ASP.NET. So different options. All right. So let's just go ahead and use one with Blazor. So you see, so I'll just say ASP.NET. So a website using Razor syntax. This template does not produce a project file for. Well, okay. Let me just pick one very basic and simple. So let's do this. Let's select the platform. Yeah, cross-platform, C#, and let's do web. Okay. And so I've just selected ASP Web.NET Framework and next. So it's going to ask me for the name. So I'll call it my demo web app, and where I want to save it. Let me put it. So all that I was typing mkdir is just the same thing that you are doing graphically. All right. So we put it in .NET. So as you can see, so this one will be called my demo web app. That's it. And then as you can see, the various versions of the framework. So I'll just leave it to this one. And then hold on. Let's go back. I think just a sec. Language is correct. Just to be sure that, yeah, that's fine. Okay. And then you can see here asking me, do I want to use HTTPS? I don't want to. All right. Question, I want to know some of the actually use ASP framework. Well, pretty much, let's just use, let me just do a single page app, right? That will make it. So MVC Web API. So there are pretty much a lot of the known application architectures apply. All right. The only difference is that you are using C# and .NET framework to build it. So standard web architectures apply across board. You can build them also in .NET. So whether you are using any of the patterns, you want to do a microservice architecture, you want to do something else, pretty much is the same thing. It's the same when it comes to .NET. It's just that this time around you are using, how do you call it? You are using C# and the .NET framework. All right. So this has gone to scaffold all those crazy things and even added a lot more things. So I can go ahead and run this. Click run at the top. No, don't configure SSL for me. I don't want SSL. I was very emphatic about that. Advanced, yes. Continue to localhost. I know it's not safe because I'm the one running it. And there you go. This is an ASP.NET app that has been scaffolded also for me. All right. Now it's asking for, and the thing is that I can go ahead and even do a login right now. I'll probably say sam@sam.com. My password is sam123. Oh no, sorry, register as a new one. So say my email is sam@sam.com. Hometown is Accra. I'm lying. Password sam123. Confirm sam123. Save. So now you see, I didn't have to write any logic for this, but because I scaffolded it with Visual Studio Code, it's putting all these things in place for me automatically. All right, that's not my password though. So let me do something. Let me make it a bit. So sam@123. Let's try it and register. Okay. They should go in, create a user, and allow me to log on. So all this scaffolding, all right, using so there you go. This is an ASP.NET site created, and look at that, logged me in, right? I didn't have to create all these things, right? It's the same approach we're taking. So all I had to do, go select, I want to build this app, select the options, and it scaffolded all these things for me. If you go back here, you can see here, the startup CES, like it's pretty much put all the things I need to get started. And all I have to do is just go start making tweaks, changing it to meet my needs. But apart from that, this is a functional site, right? Very, very, very functional site here. And I can go to the API section of this application. Do you see that? So it also created an API side of it for me. And it's an API side that is able to interact with the application. So maybe the CLI was a bit complicated, but the CLI gives you the basis of fundamentals of how this whole thing. But if that's a problem, hey, you can do that here. We've seen how to do it in Visual Studio, right? Very simple. Created my demo web app, all these things there, and you can see the app running with authentication and all these things, routing. Is that clear now?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Song. Yes, Mr. Song. I can.
Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. And just for the sakes of clarity, let me go ahead and stop this and actually close this out, right? So now I don't have anything open, and let's do the same thing again in how do you call it? Not Android Studio. Let's do the same thing in Visual Studio Code. All right, we've seen the CLI, we have seen Visual Studio. Let's do the same thing in Visual Studio Code. So I'll open Visual Studio Code. All right, and then let's go ahead and close. Let me close the folder. So technically just giving me a blank or a fresh workspace. All right. So I can now go ahead and do Control P. Let's do that. .NET. Come on. Yeah, it's loading. And whilst I'm doing it, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask the questions. Hold on, I think there's something locking it up. So Control Shift P. Okay. So .NET. I'm trying to see if I've changed something here. I did some changes though, but yeah. Okay, so it's using the interactive stuff. All right. Yeah, any questions? I'm just trying to see if I have this set up for my extensions. Any questions? You guys are quiet, Papa. Hey, And how. Anyway, let's see. Let's say demo web app. Yeah, let me open this. I wanted to show you something here before we closed. Yeah, so this one just had welcome to Accra and stuff. So I just want to add something here. All right. So let's go ahead. And this is your POC HTML, right? Again, let's do something with the time. So let's say the time on the server is, and this is one of the features. Are there any limitation with SQL Ajax with regards to application? Well, with Blazor, all right. Now with Blazor and how do you call it? All the web assembly and stuff like that, you can pretty much do a lot of remote procedural calls without necessarily relying heavily on Ajax. There are ways to doing it. Blazor allows you to do that. So I wouldn't say there are limitations. There are different ways to approach it. So these are some of the cool things. I can do an art, and this here is invoking .NET. That I can do datetime.now, and this here is coming from the system.datetime namespace, which is one of the natives in .NET in the framework. All right. So when we save this, as usual, and if I use .NET Watch, it's going to open up, and then now I'll see that below the welcome to Accra, there'll be the time on the server is, and look at this, just like using any function just to make it similar for you. So what of the browser integration? Oh, you can change. So there you go. That's the thing. You can actually change your default browser. You are not restricted to stick to. You can change in settings what's your default browser. So if you change your default browser, what's going to happen is that when you compile, it's going to open it in your default browser. Yeah, Prince.
Yeah, Mr. Sam. I want to ask a question regarding the project folder. Like, let's say you want to write your view and all that. If you can go through the project folder for us, how where your template will be and all that. If you can explain the project for the project folder for us, I'll be very happy for.
So yeah, sure. Let's go through this. It's not. Let me close it. So pretty much, this is, if you use the CLI and it scaffolds the folders for you. Like I said, program.cs is your entry point, right? This is your entry point into the application, pretty much standard. Unless, of course, you're adding some extra services or injecting some things, you hardly will make changes here. This is just your project, your C# or web project, right? So just definition of it. It's targeting .NET 6 frameworks. It's enabled, nullable. You can use, implicit using is enabled. These are just ways of configuring. Say, look at this as your in your node application. Look at this as your config.json equivalent. All right. Here, as you can see, app settings. So any settings specific to the app, if you want to use them, this app settings or development is the same thing, but this is more for development. So if you're running in development environment, it will take these settings into consideration. If you deploy into production, it will take app settings into consideration. www is just your folder to host your static files, your CSS, JavaScript, any library you are using. So you see there is in Bootstrap, jQuery validations, all those things will go into www, just like even your regular node or any third-party stuff. Properties is more specific to the project. So here it stores things like environmental variables and certain things that you would need to run the app. So those you find in properties. Pages, like the name implies, just all the pages that make up your web application. Now, there are shared pages. There are some pages or some fragments that are shared. So, for instance, your header, your footer, you can see privacy, error, some standard. There are some standard views, right? So they store them in there. So you can see here, see layout. These are all standard. Layout is shared amongst all the pages. So they put that in shared. Apart from that, all other pages will. So if you added, so if I only have one page, which is the index, there's another one called privacy. So depending on the number of pages you want to put, those will come under pages. Object and bin are more for compiling. When you compile the app, when you build the app, it puts them in objects. So you can see these are more related to building of the app. And if you are building it in debug mode, your debug symbols are kept in here. So you don't need to worry yourself about this one. So depending on how you are building, whether you are building into the object or bin, this tool would have settings that are specific to compiling of your web app and making it ready to be deployed. This tool here, History and Visual Studio Code, were added by Visual Studio Code to track the changes I have done to the files over time. So you see that when it started, it was just welcome. I added some things to it. It just keeps tracks of it. This is just something that Visual Studio Code does. So pretty much that is a folder structure in Visual Studio Code. All right. Now, oh yeah, I've closed that one. If we opened Visual Studio itself, it's pretty much the same thing. Just that because we selected a few more options, Visual Studio went ahead to add extra stuff for us. Web config, there are views, scripts. You know, these are all additional folders that store. Pretty much, it's kind of like the application has been segregated or broken into smaller pieces, decoupled for easy manageability and scalability. But the concept is still the same. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. So, I mean, okay. So it means that if you use the command line to create a project, you have to create the views by yourself, the views folder by yourself, right?
No, it created it for you. It created it for you. You just have to, just that, again, the options I passed were just minimal options. You can add extra options for it to scaffold, you know, more resources for you. But always, you see, and one of the reasons why I prefer using the CLI and the minimal is that sometimes, depending on the app you're building, you want to customize a lot of the things from scratch. So you don't want to, you don't want to have it to scaffold a lot of those things for you. We could have done the same thing. Like, for instance, we could have done the same thing here in Visual Studio Code and say, I want to create a new project. All right. And I want to do, it's, let's say, all platform and it's web, right? I could go ahead and do, where's that? Let's do empty. So ASP core empty, ASP website empty. You see it. So I could have just said, you know what? Let's do an ASP core empty website, and I'll just say empty app demo, and I can put it in the same place. Don't configure, right? Don't configure HTTP. Don't enable Docker. Let's use .NET 6. All right. And you see it almost the same thing as you are seeing in Visual Studio Code. All right. It's just because we picked extra. So here, let's just close this. So if you look at this, let's see if I can put this on the side here and put this one here. Oh no. Okay, so this one. So you see that it's almost the same thing. So you have your program.cs, you have your app settings.json here, you have your properties in here. Pretty much the same, right? So the only difference is that if you keep, now in Visual Studio, right? In Visual Studio, the more you are clicking, the more options is adding. What you saw me do in command line and also in Visual Studio Code was just to select the minimal options. So if you wanted to scaffold a lot more things for you, you add more options. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Great. So pretty much, I think this is where we will draw the curtains for today.
Hello, Sam.
Edwin, yeah.
Yeah, let me ask one question, then we can. Okay, so
Sure.
assuming you create a project using Visual Studio Code, right? Going forward, can you open and continue developing in Visual Studio?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
You can do that.
All right.
Edwin.
Yeah, it is fine with me.
Okay. All right. Awesome. All right. So this is where we draw the curtains. That's how it's simple it is to use .NET to start your web development journey. Like I said, next step
So it's simple, but not as simple to some of us.
What makes it not simple? Is it the entire scaffolding? Or say that again.
It's like from what we learn, like we are viewing it from a point that we understood C sharp. Meanwhile, some of us don't.
No, I made an assumption that I know most of you do not know C sharp, so I won't stress on the C sharp part of things. So even if you were following, you realize that I wasn't dwelling so much on C sharp versus using the framework to scaffold and create your project. But I'm saying that before you can even create once you've even created the project, the next thing is to write the code, correct? And you have to start using your code, using the language to write the code. If you're just doing front end kind of things, there's nothing wrong. You can still go ahead and use your JavaScript and your HTML, and it works. Just like you realize that majority of it, if I have to open this again, you realize that at the core of it, if I go to the pages and I open, no, where's that index? Yes, you realize that at the core of this is pretty much is just HTML. All right, and there's only an injection or infusion of C sharp, or which they call Blazor in here. Apart from that, the core of it is still your HTML divs, and if you want to use Bootstrap and stuff like that, it's pretty much the same thing. The only server side of the things is where you probably would do some extensive, C sharp stuff. But again, baby steps. I don't expect you to grasp everything in one session. I've shared a couple of resources. Go to the resources, take them one at a time and walk through them, and I think it will be fine.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
But anyways, if you have any questions, I've shared my social media handles. So hey, reach me or ping Prince, and then we'll see how we can resolve that issue.
Okay, Mr. Sam, in the comment section, I just gave a comment like this. I said, how good should I be with C sharp to get comfortable with ASP.NET? How good should I be with Net before I can transition into ASP.NET? And also, is it by force to learn Blazor, or have to learn Blazor before I get started with ASP.NET?
So what's happening is that Microsoft is making Blazor the de facto front end framework for ASP.NET. You can do MVC. MVC is still there. Gone were the days where we're doing something called web forms, but web forms have been deprecated. You can still do model view controller, which is something that is happening in Angular and some of the other front-end frameworks. You can do a similar thing. But truth is that if you want to build a complete end-to-end web application, just like you want some cool backend services as well, you need to get comfortable with your C sharp. If you want to create a lot of backend services. Apart from that, if you don't want to, Blazor is mostly, a combination of adding some syntax or some functional sugar to HTML and CSS, just like you're seeing on my screen. The bulk part of this thing is HTML, CSS. The only thing that will probably remind you of C# here is this function here, and then up here, injection from Blazor. Pretty much that's it.
Okay, so
yeah.
So what's the difference between Razor and Blazor?
Say that again.
Blazor and
Blazor.
Razor.
Sorry, it's Blazor, not Razor. It's Blazor.
Okay.
It's Blazor. Sorry. And Blazor, like I said, it just, Blazor is kind of like your Vue or your React. All right. It just lets you build interactive UIs using C# instead of JavaScript. All right. So if you already learned your C# and you don't want to learn JavaScript, you can use Blazor. So Blazor allows you to develop so what you would have written in JavaScript, you rather write it in C# and consume it in a web application. So think about this. Conventionally, if you're building a web application, you use HTML, CSS, and some JavaScript if you want functionality. Do we agree with that?
Yes.
So Blazor allows you to use C# instead of the JavaScript. So all those extra functionality, you write them in C#, and then Blazor can consume it on the front end. And Blazor can actually call or invoke JavaScript functions. So it's not like it's just C#. So if you have written JavaScript functions, Blazor can invoke it for you as well. Let me share a resource with you on Blazor for those who want to. But like I said, because you all have different varying experiences, I would recommend that now that you have the basics, just try to get acquainted with C#. Just normal things. How do I create variables? How do I do, the very basic programming constructs in C#? Once you are comfortable with that, you can go back and start to build ASP.NET or even Blazor applications.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Sam, you also said something about we having sessions on ASP.NET. Maybe you can start with C#. So I'm interested. And those of us here would like to learn it. And I think I don't know whether we can discuss it here, or maybe after this section you discuss it thoroughly. Then you see how to go to go about it.
Yeah, so we can discuss that after the session. It's something that I'm sure the .NET user group would like to take on. So let's discuss it after the session.
Okay, sure. Okay, so we have a comment in the comment section, a question in the comment section. It says, please, you made some recommendations for entering in .NET, that is C#. What of SQL service? That's what it says here by Hansen.
Well, pretty much SQL is on the database side of things. So how do I even answer this? It depends on what you're trying to build, right? So SQL Server is technically a database, side of. If you are talking connecting your web application to SQL, that's totally different thing, but that's doable. .NET provides you extensions and namespaces and classes that allow you. Entity framework is one. It's being updated now. That allows you to communicate with a database, so that can also be done.
Okay, so if you have any questions, can you unmute yourself and ask your question? We'll be ending this section very soon. So if you have any questions, kindly you can comment. Boss is typing. You can comment and also unmute yourself and ask. If you know that you take some time type, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. So say someone is asking, boss is asking you of your social media handles. So I think it's S Adrani on all social media handles.
I just added it again there.
Yeah, S Adran. Yeah, on Twitter,
All the places.
Instagram, all of the platforms.
Yeah.
Okay. So if they are okay, Boss is also typing, still typing. We want to ask you more questions. Okay, he said thanks. So okay, Mr. Sam. So I think we are done. I wanted to know how to start a project. That's one of my expectations, and that we met. So right now we have to learn C sharp. So though I started learning C sharp sometime the last quarter of 2021, I'll start it again by learning C sharp. So I think you all have to learn C sharp. This is a beautiful framework. So learn C sharp, then you can get comfortable with ASP.NET.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And
that,
like I
yeah.
said, if you learn it, if you learn C sharp, you don't just build web applications. You can use it to build mobile apps. You can use it to build machine learning apps, game development, microservices, APIs, IoT. So if you learn that one language, allows you to build on all these platforms.
All of
And you
them.
can reuse your code. You can reuse your code. A code you use. So if you build, you can use C sharp to build an API that is consumed by a website. It can be consumed by a mobile app, an Alexa, Siri, all these things. So it's a good time. It's a good time to learn C sharp.
Okay. So my enthusiasm for C sharp has increased right now. So the interest that I really want to learn it. So Charlie, so I'll quickly end the section or end the recording, and I'll say goodbye to all of you. And thank you for joining this call. Thank you for joining. I really appreciate it. And Mr. Samuel, thank you for answering my invitation. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And to Victor, Edwin, thank you for joining this section. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah. So,
Awesome. Stay safe and enjoy your day.
okay, sure. Okay, sure. Have you downloaded software? Yes. Hey, all the videos that you watch.